As as Brenda said, I am out of Las Vegas, and she asked me to drive up today to speak to you about solitary bees. So for the next, get comfortable. So for the next 3 to 4 hours, we're going to really get into some good stuff. Not really. We've got bee tubes, we've got honey, we've got it all. Okay. So next slide, please. We are a member of the University of Nevada, Reno, and UNLV Cooperative Extension. And we get our funding from the federal government, so we have this slide in all of our presentations that we do not discriminate, period. Except for me, because I'm old. And next slide, please. Importance of native bees. So the role in pollination, they forage for nectar and pollen. You know, we don't want to get native bees confused with honeybees. Native bees do not make honey. All they do is make little bees. That's their job. And little bees and big bees, they pollinate, right? In order to pollinate, they've got to go out and find nectar. They've got to go out and find pollen and some water resources. And that's their job. That's all they do. That's all they do. Adaptations to local plants. Native bees have been evolved to efficiently pollinate specific. So you've got the big carpenter bees that they attract into big tunnel type, like anybody know Tacoma stands or yellow bells. They love that. They fly in there, they buzz, and all the pollen, they attract the pollen onto them. And different bees like to forage for different flowers, or mainly flowers. And their decline. We need to mention their decline is based on habitat loss. We're building many houses, right? And pesticide exposure. Slide. So important difference between solitary and social. Social bees are honeybees and bumblebees. They make up 2 to 10%. Some people say 1.5%, whatever. You talk to different scholars, you might get different answers. So it's let's say between 1.5 and 10% of the entire population of bees, honeybees. They live in colonies with a queen, workers, and drones, working collaboratively to maintain the hive. Now, the workers are all females. The drones, the males, they're bigger bees. Their one job is to go out and spread the hormones. That's their only job. They're not allowed back. Once they hatch, they fly the coop, the hive, and they're gone. The female bees do everything else. And you know, this is I do this all the time. This is a solitary bee presentations, but I get off on tangents about social bees, honeybees, because I love honeybees, but I digress. Slide. Solitary bees make up 90 to 98% of the total bees. That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, we focus on honeybees because we like the honey. We earn money for the honey, but honeybees are only 2% to 10% of the total population of bees. So solitary bees independently build and maintain their nest without colony support. So it's one bee, one queen per one hole. And she's got to go out and find the nectar. She's got to go out and find pollen. She's got to go out and find water so that she can, that's her sole purpose in life, is to make more bees. And in doing so, she has to visit flowers on trees, on plants, to gather the nectar and the pollen. And in doing so, she cross-pollinates. Each female solitary bee independently constructs and maintains her own nest. No help. She doesn't have a hive. In a hive, I digress again, in a beehive, you've got between 20 and 50,000 bees in a beehive. So the queen, there's one queen in there, and she's got lots of help. She's got people that, the younger bees, give me just a couple, I love honeybees. The younger bees, they stay in night, they learn, they really cater to the queen, they feed her, they keep her cool. Older bees, a little bit older, they clean the place. If a bee dies, unfortunately, in the hive, they sweep them out, drop to the ground. So you got a team of bees, there's 40,000 on average, or 20,000, 25,000 on average bees. in a hive. So there's plenty of resources for them to do what they need to do. The strong bees, as they mature, they go out and forage. And they can forage in a 3-mile radius, 6-mile diameter. So there's a lot of flying to be done with these honeybees. That's similar with solitary bees. They also go out and forage in a 6-mile diameter, but she is alone. She's not got any help to go out and gather the pollen and the nectar, no help whatsoever. So she's in danger as she's going around to be, she might die in flight, right? Because they live, and I'll go into that, 4 to 6 weeks. That's it, 4 to 6 weeks. Honeybees or native bees, that's all their lifespan is. So it's tick-tock time, right? Mason bees, which are some of my favorites, mason bees, they make their holes in cavities in wood, hollow stems, reed-like plants, and they cap their holes. They're masons, they cap it with mud. So if you have a mini hive, and they'll live in harmony, mason bees will live in harmony with any other native solitary bee in their hotel or house. Those words are interchangeable. But when they fill it with their eggs, their cocoons, they cap it. And when they cap it, you can tell what type of bee is visiting your hotel based on how they cap it. And mason bees cap it with mud. Slide. Leafcutter bees, one of my favorite. You ever had in your yard a perfect semicircle cut out of a leaf? If you've seen it, they love roses. They love different yellow bells. They love different plants the most. And if you see this, you know you've got leafcutter bees. And some people, they're like, I need to get rid of these, but they're not going to take all the leaves. They just take a few of them, and they use these leaves to line the tubes. So they'll fly into the tube, they'll make a little bed, they'll go out and get some nectar and pollen and water, they make bee bread, they put the bee bread on the leaf, then they encapsulate it in what we'll call a cocoon, and they seal it. They seal it with a leaf or a piece of a leaf. And they'll put up to 5 different cells or cocoons in one 6-inch piece of wood. It's amazing. And then they cap it. And so you can see, and you'll see in a later slide, where there's different bees that have frequented one of our hives at the research and demonstration orchard. And you can tell they're living together because they'll be capped differently. One will be capped with plant material, one will be capped with mud, one will be capped with resin. That's a resin bee. I've had one resin bee in our hive. Slide, please. Carpenter bee, big bee. Many people get it confused with a bumblebee because it's got that yellow stripe. Some don't have the yellow stripe, but carpenter bees are native solitary bees. And again, solitary bees means they live alone, they work alone, but they can live in unity with other bees. And so I've got some carpenter bee holes here. They need 1/2-inch wide big holes. But they really like to dig their holes in weathered wood, decks, eaves, whatever. Very sharp jaws, perfectly 1/2-inch round holes. And they get confused, like I said, with bumblebees. Slide, please. Life cycle. I mentioned they live 4 to 6 weeks. Honeybees and native bees, 4 to 6 weeks. But from the egg stage, it'll take 2 to 4 weeks for them to hatch and become larvae, then another 2 to 4 weeks to become pupa, and then the adult. And up here, it talks about 70 degrees. 70 degrees seems to be the point in which they become active in the bee house. If a queen lays the egg, in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, it'll be ready to emerge unless it's too late in the season, meaning it's heading to fall. Temperatures are dropping below 70 degrees at night. And so it's really weird because if that happens, that bee will not hatch until next spring. It stays in there with that bee bread until next spring when it'll emerge. And it's really cool. But if it's in the middle of the summer, or like now, its temperatures are above 70, The bees are active. They're trying to fill wherever their home is. They're trying to lay those cocoons, and in 8 weeks, they're ready to hatch. And they'll hatch if the temperature's warm enough, and they start to cycle all over again. Their lifespan, like I mentioned, they hatch in about 3 weeks, live 5 to 6 weeks as adults. These are social bees. Bumblebees hatch in 6 weeks and live 6 weeks as adults. So again, that 6 weeks seems to be pretty standard. Solitary bee lifespan, same thing. They hatch in about 6 weeks and live another 6 weeks. So 4 to 6 weeks, and if they encounter the wrong person, might be less, right? Slide, please. This is a picture of a beehive. Not a good picture, not a good looking beehive, but nonetheless, there are honeybees, between 20 and 50,000 bees per hive, like I said, and a picture of our group of excellent beekeepers on our bee team, and they maintain the beehives. Just again, a small sidebar. Everything wants the nectar and the honey. Honeybees make honey, and so there's a slide in here about predators, but everything. So these beekeepers have to watch every single week for an invasion of spiders, of mites, of whatever insects will get in there after that nectar and honey. They have to take every frame out, inspect it. There's many other things that they inspect for, but really, you should take a class. We offer 3 different classes. The one intro is 101. And so you think you know about honeybees? Take the 101 class and you'll leave there just wow, with a wealth of information on honeybees. 102 is more, so you think you want to raise honeybees? This is what it's going to, this is the equipment, the cost, blah, blah, blah. 103, the final class that they finalized is you have bees, you have a hive, and you're having issues. No doubt you're having issues. So here's what to look for. Here's how to take care of it. Here's how to maintain your hive. So 3 really good classes on honeybees. Take a class. Slide. Bumblebees. Bumblebees, you saw the hives for honeybees. Bumblebees also make hives. They make their hives. We had a picture of a hive taken in a date palm tree. One of the fronds had fallen out, leaving a hole perfect for these bees. They create just a small, very small, they make honey, but not for you. It's to overwinter. They have very small colony, so they make just enough honey for the queen, because the queen, overwinters, she kicks everybody else out of the hive. Everybody's got to go, and she overwinters in that hive, and so she needs just enough honey to survive the winter. And then when the temperatures get above 70, she starts the cycle all over again. Bumblebee. Slide. Solitary bees. Solitary bees, like we were saying, make their homes in wood. They can use tubes. Thank you again, Brenda, for getting these. Amazon, cheap. But here's an example of a carpenter bee, half-inch size hole. There's the carpenter bee. And carpenters like wood, right? So when they seal it, it'll look like kind of like wood putty. And other bees, if this doesn't look like, in this piece of wood, doesn't look like there are smaller holes, and I'll go into diameter in a sec, but if there were smaller holes drilled into this piece of wood, she would probably have other, like masons or leaf cutters or squash bees, any other type of solitary native bee making a home with her in another hole in the log. Mason bees I love. Mason bees have a wide variety of different species of mason bees, small to large, and they have a very wide variety of diameter of holes they like. These here would attract mason bees. And when you go on Amazon, you can order mason bee tubes. There's a lot of mason bees in southern Nevada. But point is, they'll seal it with mud. And so you can tell the difference looking at it when the hole gets sealed, the difference between wood putty and mud. And here's a mason bee at work. Slide. Leaf cutters, again, my favorite. You saw this slide before, the perfect semicircle cut into a leaf. they line the inside of their nest, one tube, and they will lay the egg, bee bread, seal it up in a cocoon, and then seal that cocoon off. So if this is the tube, this is the hole. Pick one. She'll lay the first egg here, seal it. Second egg, seal it. Third. Usually 5 can go in a 6-inch deep piece of wood, and then she'll seal it with plant material, so it'll be green. And they're awesome to watch do that. So here's a mason and a leaf cutter living in close proximity. You can see the leaf cutter sealed it with plant material, and the mason with mud. Slide. Predators. So social bee predators, that's honeybees and, help me out. Yes, bumblebees, here. Surprise. Honeybees and bumblebees. Same predators for social and for solitary. Solitary bees, wasps, hornets, spiders, birds, bears, just they have the same predators. It just seems like social bees, because there are so many of them, they attract so many more predators. I haven't been doing this for just a few years, and I've never ever had a problem with any of my bee hotels or bee houses. They're interchangeable, and never had a problem. But the honeybee team is constantly having problems with predators. And why do we have predators? Because they're all after the high protein larva, pupa, and calorie-rich honey. Slide. So, how can we help? Build a bee hotel or a bee house. Bee hotel, bee house, interchangeable. And so I've done that. Very, very simple. It took me 20 to 30 minutes to do this. And the purpose is the hotels provide a ready-to-use, semi-safe, dry nesting space. The bee hotels or bee house can be simple or as complex as you would like. And I've got different pictures in here to show you. They can get pretty complex. Simple bee hotel parts. This bee hotel was made with the following parts. A 1-inch by 4-inch by 36-inch piece of common pine. Just 36 inches, Home Depot, $7. You can make it out of plywood though. Measuring tape or square, pencil, saw, very, very basic. Now, I should say saw. Home Depots or Lowe's will cut this piece of wood for you for free. You buy it, they'll cut it for free. So I go into the dimensions in a bit. You need a drill bit, some screws, and a screwdriver. Can use an electric screwdriver, but a battery op not necessary. And cardboard tubes or a 2x4. This is a 2x4 or a 2x2, which would be half of a 2x4. I've even built hotels that are big enough to use 2x6s. Later I'll talk about this. This is treated wood. If you go to the store, you'll see there are holes drilled into this or stapled into this. And bees will not use this. They don't like the chemicals that are put in treated wood. And so caution against using treated wood. And they treat 4x4, they treat any wood with the chemicals to prolong the life of the wood. You could use cardboard tubes, like I said, or 2x4s or 2x2s. Slide, please. Very simple tool list. Then I cut the wood, or I have Home Depot cut the wood. And so they're down here, you can see there's 4 7-inch pieces and 1 8-inch piece. That's just what's left over in the 36-inch long piece of wood. 7 inches long. Why 7 inches? Well, bees like, for some reason, 6 inches. And I'll caution you again, if you order them off of a website, you might get a very small bee hotel, bee house. And we've tried so many different varieties of those small houses. They don't use them. They just don't like them. Whether they're too small in depth, don't know. But they like wood, they like cardboard, and they like the 6-inch depth. Now, I don't drill all the way through the back because, 4 to 6 weeks is all they're going to live. So tick-tock, right? They've got 4 to 6 weeks. If I drill all the way through the back, must admit, sometimes I've drilled through the back. Sometimes I've drilled through the side, right? drill bit goes crazy. But it just creates an issue for them having to fill it first before they get started. If you don't have a house, though, they've got to go and scrounge for a place to live. They've got to find a hole in the ground, hole in a tree, a hole in a house, whatever. They've got to go and find themselves a place to live. If you have a ready-made house for them, hung in your backyard, front yard, whatever, they're ready to go. They can start right now. And like I said, 4 to 6 weeks is not a long time. The wood, the wood for the house is 7 inches deep, so that I can put a 6-inch. The tubes come 6 inches. I can put a 6-inch tube or a 6-inch piece of wood in here and still have room for the bees. They like to land and crawl. Some bees, though, and I've stood for a long time filming or taking pictures of the various bee hotels, and some of them will fly straight in, but a lot of them like to land. This also creates a little bit of a roof. If it rains, the once a year it rains, it gives a little bit of a roof. The back, 8-inch back, will allow you an opportunity to hang it if you're going to hang it on the house or your shed. Inch and a half, inch and 3/4 inch wood screws would work. Or if you're going to hang it on a block wall, you need masonry screws. Yeah, what else? Landing zone. Slide. Then what I do is I rough fit it. I want to make sure that I didn't make a mistake, so I put the house together without screwing anything together, just to rough fit to make sure that everything's going to be okay before I start to drill. Slide. Then you start to drill. So I pre-drill. The reason I do that, because I don't know how mature this wood is. If it's new and fresh, I could probably go straight through it without cracking or splitting the wood. But just in case, I pre-drill the hole slightly smaller than the screw that I'm using, and I use 1.5-inch screws. I have used 1 3/4 inch, which is fine. They're wood screws. So I pre-drill the hole, and then I put the first screw in. And then if it looks good, feels good, I follow suit with the other 3 screws on the top and on the bottom. Slide. Do the same thing with the back. Re-drill the back, and then put the 2 hanging holes in the top. Very, very simple. Very, like I said, 20 to 30 minutes, including the sawing, or if you've got a chop saw, whatever. But very few tools are needed to put these together. Very, very simple. Slide. Then you fill it. So you could fill it. This has a 2x4 in there. They say if you're going to use wood 2x4, 2x6, try not to put the holes closer than 3/4 inch together. Don't know why. Haven't found any research to tell me why. But many different sites have said 3/4 inch apart. And so I followed that. And they, like I said earlier, they fill it up. They will fill it up. And this one here is all tubes. And you can get white tubes, which are a little bit smaller. Like I said earlier, I've got a diagram chart to tell you why that I use different size holes or different size tubes. They attract different bees. But point is, you can use them all when doing your bee house. Doesn't matter. Bees will use it. Doesn't matter. You can go solid, fill it up with the tubes. You can go partial wood, partial tubes, partial wood, 2 different size tubes, 3 different, doesn't matter. They'll use it. Slide. Again, you can make it very simple, and these are very simple, or you can make one that's a little bit more complex. But you can see, it's the same hotel, I just added a roof. Slide. Additional information. I mentioned treated wood. Do not use treated wood. They don't like it. You'll be upset because you spent 20 minutes building a hotel that they don't use. And it's free. They move in for free. We don't even charge them for it, but they won't if you use treated wood. Leave 1 inch in front for a landing zone. And again, the landing zone will, not only does it allow them, remember I said they fly in a 6-mile radius, a 3-mile radius, 6-mile diameter, so they get pretty tired. So when they come back, they might want to land, take a breath before going into their respect. How do they know where it is? How do they know how to get home? Amazing, just amazing little creatures. So are honeybees. Oh, I don't want to digress. But again, amazing creatures. The hotel should face south to south. The morning sun. Just remember the morning sun comes up. It's a little warm. It's away from that terrible afternoon sun. But the hotel should face south to southeast to catch that morning sun. Just face it to the morning sun. You can see here in this hotel, they've started filling it. You've got different, do I have this must be new because there's nothing filled up here. But I've got plant material and mud side by side. So I've got two bees living in harmony side by side. And they probably, and if there was a bee populating this hotel, they say, I haven't tried it, I need to do that. I need to write that down and do it. But they say at night you can go out with a flashlight pointed in there and you'll see two little eyes staring back at you because they're in here protecting what they've done, right? But I don't know what they would do, and I need to do that. I've never been stung by a solitary bee, never. And I've stood in front of the hive for what seems like hours, taking a picture when the bee goes in or a video, waiting for the bee to come out, go back in, and I've never, ever been bothered, ever. But I have been stung by honeybees. And that's only because for two reasons. Either they're defensive, meaning I've gotten too close to their resource, their hive, and somebody inside the hive, and how they do this, I have no idea, but they will communicate with one another and say, we have an intrusion. And so a few will come out and they flick you. They just head force and flick you. And now you know you're too close. And if you get closer, then they'll start flying around your face. And when you go to, they land on your ear. If you go to slap them, or maybe on your head or on your arm, that's when you get stung. It's the pinch. It's not necessary. My brother will stand there and he'll let them land on him. They won't cover him, but they'll land on him and then fly away. But your knee-jerk reaction is to swat, right? You feel something, you swat, and the pinch of the swat is what causes them to sting. Unfortunately, whether they're a day old or just near their 6-week expiration date, they're going to die because honeybees are only allowed one sting. One sting. So are solitary bees, but I've never, ever had a solitary bee be aggressive with me. Never. Slide. Some more additional information. Maybe put them 4 to 7 feet off the ground. The reason for that, they say, are predators. Now, bird is a predator. A bird could fly up there and get that, so, but they mentioned 4 to 7 feet above the ground. I've done it, and they fill it. They just fill it. Shelter it from intense heat. So this hotel is there. At the research and demonstration orchards, we have a lot of palm trees, and the palm trees will give some shade, but not a lot of shade. So I'm going to plant either an orange jubilee or a yellow bell, maybe 3 to 4 feet away from this pole, because this is facing the east. So the west will just cook this hive, but they still use it. They'll fill it up. I've got a water resource down here. It doesn't have to be that close. We just did that because we take a lot of the people that come over to the orchard. We take them on tours, and it's just kind of decorative. But I mean, they will find a water source. Like I said, they forage 3-mile radius. And so there's plenty of water resources for them. They mainly are after pollen, nectar, so flowers. And speaking of that, I've got handouts or brochures for you, recommended plants for pollinators and beneficial insects. And this is really cool because it tells you what type of plants that are native to southern Nevada and will attract pollinators. Not just bees, but it tells you here what type of pollinators, whether they're butterflies, lacewings, bees. Real good handout. The other is a native bee identification guide. Front and back, great. I still can't tell the difference between a honeybee. My brother says, well, honeybees, they're not as hairy as native bees. Well, I mean, they're flying. How can I tell, right? Unless one lands on me. But a good handout there as well. So, shelter from intense heat, placed near a water resource and flowering plants to meet the bees' essential needs. People have asked me, how about a pool? Yeah, pool. I mean, pool has chlorine. Um, they don't, they'll drink it, but they won't swim. So, if you're really dedicated, you want to have something that floats, a piece of wood, some wine corks, so they can land on those and have their little drink of water. My brother puts a piece of like cheesecloth over his fountain so they can climb down to the water and then climb back up. They don't swim. So that's might be why you see bees floating in your pool. They don't swim. Not saying you need to fill your pool with wood, but just an idea. Slide. Additional info. I mentioned the diagram chart. And so I mentioned also mason bees. So mason bees like a large hole, 3/8 inch, all the way down to 7/32. So a big variety. I mentioned also leafcutter bees. Leafcutter bees like a 1/4 inch to 7/32. So what I've done is I'm not going to go out and buy 8 different drill bits. And these bits, if you're drilling a hole 5 3/4 inches deep or 5 inches deep, the bit has got to go in your drill, right? So it's got to be like 7 inches. So those aren't cheap. And so I'm not going to buy 8. So I've got a rather large one, a medium-sized one, and a smaller one. And that'll work for the mason bees and for the leafcutter bees. I've mentioned before I drilled a 1/2 inch hole for carpenter bees, and they just didn't use it. So that's, to me, it's a waste of room. Now, we don't charge for our rooms, but it's still a waste of room, right? So maybe someday I'll make a hotel just for carpenter bees. So this, again, online, solitary bee, hole size diameters. And you'll pull up so many different diagrams. It'll make your head swim. There's so much information out there. However, we don't have a lot of information in Southern Nevada about our native bees. Is it the same information than we see from Nebraska or from North Carolina? I know when we teach, I also am on the tree team, and we teach a lot about the native trees that we like people to plant. And they're not the same. They're not even close. So just be careful when you do your research. Do a lot of research if you're going to research. Do some research. The Arizona has research on native solitary bees, which I think is a lot more accurate than a source on the East Coast. Slide. Okay, maintenance. So you put your hotel up. They've started filling the big holes, the small holes. You can see that I've got plant material. So I've got leaf cutters. I've got masons. I've got a resin bee. Resin bees are messy. Where do they get to just slosh resin all over it to seal the hole? Maybe they're new. Maybe this is a young bee trying to get used to trying to get skilled at how to seal a hole. But most of them are very good at sealing the hole. So I mentioned 70 degrees at the end of the season. So this is the beginning of the season. They will work all summer long. Like I said, if they fill a tube now, and there are some tubes up here that are filled. There's a tube here that's filled. So they love cardboard or wood. If they fill one, they start on the next one until they expire. They just keep the cycle going. Then these babies, when they get in, there is a picture later of, you'll see, if you're lucky enough, you'll be able to see a bee emerge. But you'll see a little hole that they've dug out from the inside. And so they start the process all over again. It has to be above 70 degrees for them to get active. So at the end of the season, meaning temperatures now are dropping below 70 degrees. Last year, wow, it was late. I mean, it was like November, December when it seemed like they weren't active any longer. But when they stop being active, you want to remove the capped wood pieces from everything. I take everything out and I put it in an emergence box. Emergence box just allows the bees to be somewhat safe, right? I use a shoebox. So I put them in, close the shoebox. There's about a 1/2 inch space, and I have a picture of an emergence box. But long story short, it just gets them out of freezing temperatures, rain or snow, which we don't have, right? Very often. So if you leave them outside, that's fine. If the temperatures want to drop uh, below freezing, you want to bring them into the garage or into your shed, whatever. And they won't emerge. So that's a great point. Thanks for asking. Remember, in the beginning of the season, like now, if they get active and fill a tube, the bees inside dig their way out. Fly, I should say also that the bees are smart because they will fill four. I said they fill 5 cocoons. The last cocoon they fill on the outside is the one male. The reason is the males are a little bit bigger and a little bit more aggressive. They want to get out and get to work. They're ready to procreate. And so they dig their way out and the rest of the bees can follow them out. All the others are female in that tube. Whether it's wood or whether it's cardboard, same situation. The males will be born on the outside for one reason, to dig out and procreate. And they're not allowed back. So rain freeze, place them in the garage, shed, or other protected location. So at the end of the season, it's cold, they're not active. I pull everything out, put it in a shoebox. Slide. Shoebox. I have a little gap in the front with 1, 2, 3 holes drilled in it, pushed in it, screwdriver pushed in it, whatever, just so that when the bees hatch, they'll be able to see the light and find their way out. I close it up so predators can't get into it, and then I sit it in the sun. Can be made, the emergence boxes can be made of wood or cardboard. You don't even have to do this, but I'll get into why I'm doing this in just a minute. Large enough hole to fill the cap pieces of wood, so the box is just large enough to put all of the materials that you took out of your bee house into the box, including the tubes. They should have 1 to 2 clearance in front so they can break out and escape. And then, like I mentioned, the holes in the front just need to be large enough for them to escape. Slide. Another picture. This is my cardboard emergence box. So whatever website my wife got her shoes from provided us with an exit hole. How nice of them. A little bit large, but hey. And this is one that I put in there. It had 2 or 3 of them, but I put a brick or a rock on it just to keep the lids down. It gets a little bit windy, might fly open. Again, it's just for predators. So you just won't, these are on a table. So if it's going to approach freezing, I might take these boxes into the shed. Don't take them into the house. It's a little bit too warm in the house. Take them in the shed or the garage. You can see a little bit of a close-up. This is a good sidebar. This one is at the research and demonstration orchard, and our manager said, I'd like to look in it. Could I look in it? Sure. So we opened it up, and you could tell recently that the bees had started to dig their way out because there was all kinds of debris in the bottom here. And just about then, a bee emerged and fell onto the cardboard floor. And we're looking at it, and she's like, oh my heavens, is it dead? And I said, well, I don't, if it's dead, somebody pushed it out because it just fell out. And just about then, the bee woke up and flew off. It's amazing. Never have been able to see that before. But again, emergence box is only to protect the wood from the cold, the rain, the freezing temperatures. And so this box over winter would be empty, totally empty, nothing in it whatsoever. Slide. Spring preparation. So the temperatures are starting to approach 70 degrees. You're ready for the bees to be active. What you want to do is bring the emergence box back outside. Make sure it's back outside because they're going to wake up. You don't want them flying around your garage, right? So bring it back outside and then replace the nesting materials into the house. I put new nesting materials in there. I leave all of the old, everything that came out of here in the winter, I leave in that emergence box. Just leave it. And I put brand new tubes into the bee hotel. And so as soon as it's 70 or above, they're ready to be active. And so wherever they're hatching, in that emergence box or wherever, they've got a fresh place to live. I don't have to clean these tubes quickly. I just leave what I took out of the hive and leave it there all summer long. And there's fresh material for them to use in the bee house. You also want to check the resource availability. Is the water working? Do they have water? Are the plants flowering? Last winter, did you notice that plants flowered like all winter long? They just never stopped. The bees stopped becoming active. It was the coldest part of the winter, but they worked, I think, through December. They worked. But you want to have resources, when they start hatching. So you want to have flowers available. If your neighbors have flowers, remember I said 3-mile radius. So if you don't have flowers in your yard, not a problem. You don't have water in your yard, not a problem. You still have a house that's ready for them to use right now. Because I can't stress enough, 4 to 6 weeks is all they've got. So if they've got to be born, fly out of that tube, and go and find a place to live, they're burning daylight. So having something readily available, simple to make, 20 minutes, hung in your yard, facing the morning sun, simple, simple. Slide. Here's a picture of one that we have at the Research and Demonstration Orchard. Water resources box. This has a screen on it because the bees can live in here. This is butterfly habitat. And then they've got areas for lacewings, ladybugs, different type of insects can also live in this insect house along with the bees. Slide. This one has a lot of flowering plants, yellow bells, orange jubilees. They've got red yuccas. They've just got so many different plants. And here's their water resource. Every time the sprinklers go on, it fills a little saucer for them to have water. But you can see how active they are. I mean, they just are really, really active. And it's so much fun to stand there and watch them, stand in front of it, watch them fly in, fly out. Never a problem. Never once have I had a problem. Slide. Different one, a little bit more complicated. My wife went crazy on this one. She calls it her bee chalet. It's about 6.5 feet off the ground. Again, water resource. It's under the eaves. And so it's got this is facing east. So it gets the morning sun. It doesn't get that real harsh afternoon sun, and they fill it up. They just fill it up. And I'll stand there and watch them fly in and fly out. There's a 2x6, 2x4. So you can use various. I have one at the Research and Demonstration Orchard that's filled. It's so big that I filled it with 4x4s. It just would have taken too many pieces of 2x4s to fill it. So I used big, but you can use pieces of logs, whatever, right? You can be creative. Slide. So here are the resources that I used. There's so much out there, but again, you just have to be careful where it's published because there's a little different, talking about the emergence box. So it's getting to be winter. I want to empty this. They're 3/4 filled up. I'm going to take them all out. I'm going to put them in an emergence box. I'm going to brush this out a little bit, air blow it. Some of the scholars say all of that needs to go in the garbage. Other scholars will say, wrong, you can clean those. There are also inserts, paper inserts, that you can slide into these cardboard tubes, and so you just put a new paper insert in here. So there's so many different, anyway, but you can get a difference in an opinion on what to do with the stuff. What I'm going to do for a bee house that's not this one, but you've seen some of them that have 2 different sections. What I'm going to do, one section is going to be all new wood. The other section is going to be wood that I've cleaned and repurposed. But again, this gets emptied in the winter and it does not get filled again until not the spring, but the following spring. So I've got a lot of time to work on cleaning this because I've got new stuff that in the spring, these won't have hatched yet. Many of these won't have hatched because it's just now getting 70 degrees, but my bee house is empty. We got to put new stuff in the bee house. What am I going to do? So I have new stuff to go in the bee house, and I can just leave this be for as long as they need. And they'll overwinter again. If they haven't hatched and flown the coop by the time it's time to clean these out and repopulate the hive, they're not coming out. They're dead for whatever reason. And like I said, they are hatching now. The ones that we took out in the dead of the winter and put in the emergence box, they're coming out now. We've seen, remember that one in the emergence box that dropped, they're coming out now. And it's really neat to see them being used. Um, what else? Questions? That's a great question. I have not. I have not tried it. The main reason they say 4 to 7 feet off the ground is predators. But birds can land. So I don't 4 to 7 feet. I have not tried the ground. How does the, how does the male know? Well, the queen, mommy, and there's 5 holes here, 5 holes here. So 10 different bees can use this, and they're all queens. All queens. So if 10 different bees use this, they would lay female, 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 male. The queen is in her tummy. She knows. Right? I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, how do they know? How do they know? How do they know how to get home? It's just fascinating um, how smart they are. If they've got a 6 mile diameter, 3 mile radius, and they're out foraging, there are other bee houses. Do they stop and say, "Hey, I like this one better," or do they come home? It's just amazing how they work. Amazing. Correct. I've got a couple stories that were told to me. One, you got a pool. Around your pool, you've got a pool deck. On your pool deck, they put these seam separators. You know what I'm talking about? They're little plastic separators. I've had people tell me they'll use those. They just find whatever they can. Um, another that's on the ground. Correct. Good point. That's on the ground, and it's by the pool, so they got their water right there. Um, another story was you'll see holes in the ground. And they could be insects, they could be bees, but if you watch long enough, you see a bee come out. So they holes in the cracks or holes in your house, in your roof, in the eaves. Um, what are some of the other stories? Oh, somebody had a wood pile out back, just a wood pile in the back, and the wood gets old, it gets cracked, it gets weathered, and there were native bees making their homes in there. Now you have to be careful because that's a good home for honeybees, defensive bees, which if you talk honeybees, you've got to mention defensive bees, and defensive bees are just that. Came up from the south. They were called Africanized. They blended with honeybees. So now we just call them defensive. They're angry, but they will outwork a honeybee 10 to 1. And that's the reason they were raising them, is because they are so such hard-working insects that they figured, hey, we could blend it with a honeybee. We could take these bees and we could just get how much more production of honey. Well, they escaped. They started migrating north. They invaded North America. They like the South because it's warm. You don't see them. If you see a map of Africanized or defensive bees, you'll see them all in the South. You won't see them in the North or the East. But you'll know right now if you get close to a defensive bee nest or hive because they'll attack you in mass. I mean, in mass. And it's not pretty. That's one of the reasons, one of many reasons, our honeybee keepers have to look at the hives every week. Every frame gets pulled out and inspected for a variety of reasons. And one of the reasons is those defensive bees. They can infiltrate a hive. They'll kill the queen, take over the hive, and you can imagine the rest of the Western European docile bees are like, sure, no problem. Hey, I'll work for you, no problem. So every hive, every frame has to be inspected every week. Swarms. If I could digress a little bit on honeybees, people talk about swarms. Swarms in itself, swarm is a big football-sized group of honeybees, and solitary bees don't swarm. Those are not solitary bees if it's swarming. They're honeybees, or defensive bees are honeybees, but they're resting. They're not going to make their home there. They're just, the queen is in the middle. All of her attendants are around their fan. Why did she leave? Why did she tell all these bees were headed? Well, there's reasons. Either um, they didn't like what was happening. They didn't have enough resources. We had a swarm leave because we moved the hives into an area where it was away from the public that visits the orchard, away from the research projects that we have frequently going on at the orchard. It was away, and it was in a hot area of the orchard, and they didn't like it. They got moved from their nice shaded home into an area that they didn't like, and they left. Okay, not all of them, but we did notice a swarm, and they swarmed into a sprinkler box, sprinkler manifold box on the level to the ground. Quiet, it's got the resources, but it's unacceptable. We've got people, we've got the general public coming in there, we've got kids with the school tour. We just can't have it. And so we told our beekeeper, and he vacuumed them up and requeened them. So he's got hives that he's always making more hives. It seems like he's got 3 now, and through the course of the summer, he could be up to 12 hives. And he'll requeen it. He'll put the new bees in there, and the new bees will like the queen, and they'll just start from fresh, right? But I was talking about swarms. They're just resting. They're not going to be defensive. They're just resting. However, if you see a swarm and you see honeycomb, they're intending to stay. Whether it's in the eave of a house, whether it's in your attic, whether it's in the back of your car, they've been there for a while. Whether it's in a sprinkler manifold box, they've been there for a while. And if they're making comb, they intend to stay. Now you've got a problem. Because they're going to defend that. They're going to defend it. So if it's in an area in your yard, you kind of, hey, that's pretty cool. That's one thing. But if it's in an area, it's in a tree above a sidewalk. Kids ride their bikes, you're in trouble. So call an exterminator. They'll come out, and some of the exterminators will say that we will rehome these. We're not going to kill them. We're going to rehome them. And they might or they might not. But at least they're off out of they're not your problem anymore. I have not heard that people, do they use solitary bees to pollinate crops? Oh, bee. And they say, speaking of that, that bees are not, what's the right word, plant, they don't practice plant fidelity, meaning they don't go to just one plant continuously. This trick, maybe, if a bee's smart, and they are smart, they'll go to this plant, and the plant's in bloom, so they'll just go from flower to flower to flower until they get their pollen sacs. If it's a honeybee, they have pollen sacs on their back legs that they'll scrape the honey into. Native bees, not so. They'll coat themselves with the pollen. They'll get enough nectar in them, so now they're ready to fly back. They get some water on the way back. But next trip might be a different flower. They don't practice plant fidelity. They'll go to different plants. So when you say they populate now, in some areas you've seen honey called, does this have a special? Raw honey. So you've seen like orange grove honey or sage honey. If they're certified beekeeper, again, honeybees, but if they're certified, that means that's the only flowers that those bees can forage. That means, you can imagine, if they forage in a 3-mile radius, 6-mile diameter, that's all they can get to is orange trees. I mean, that must be a massive orange grove, right? Or sage or whatever. But that's the rule, is in order to call it specific, that's all they can harvest, is that plant. And most bees, they take what they can get. If there's different types of flowers, they don't care. They don't care. Those are honeybees. Have to be. The reason is solitary bees, one bee, she's alone. She's in life alone. And she's got to do everything by herself. Honeybees, on the other hand, they work as a colony. So they do things as a colony. Now, when they swarm, it could be because the queen is sick. Queens can lay up to 1,100 eggs a day. 1,100 eggs a day. So and honeybees, queens, can last 3 to 6 years. So let's say that at the end of her life. The colony that's in the hive, the attendants, they call them, that are in the hive, they recognize that she's not doing well. And so they're going to start making additional queens. And these queens are so big that if this is the hive, the holes face up like this, and in the hive, you can see a queen is laid across. She's so big she won't fit in any of the comb. So they'll lay it across. It's like 2 to 3 times as big as a normal cocoon. And so the beekeepers, like I said, every week they look at every frame, and if they see these queen eggs or queen cocoons, they know something's wrong with our queen. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that is going to mean at some point some of these bees are leaving. They're going to swarm because that's why they're making the queens. When the queens hatch, she's going to say, "Who's going with me?" And half of them are taken off, and that's the swarm. That's what you saw. They left for whatever reason. It was in the orchard where it was too hot. They didn't like their home. We're leaving. It could be where the queen is sick, and half of them said, "We're going to go find," but now they've got to go and find a home. So they're out looking for a home. They've got scouts. If the hive has 40,000 bees, 20,000 of them are going to leave. That's a lot of bees. So most of them will form, like I said, a soccer ball or a football around the queen to keep her cool, to let her rest. She's big, and so she's not a good flyer. And so they're going to make sure that she's well fed, has enough nutrition, and rested. And other bees are assigned the job of going out and scouting. Where can we go live? Where can we make our new home? Is it a sprinkler manifold box? Is it a cardboard? Our director had bees in his backyard in just an old broken down cardboard box that they made a hive into. He didn't know that. He's got a big property, so it's out back. Now he's going to throw a wedding, and his wife is out saying, "Well, what do we need to do to make this presentable for our wedding?" And she noticed a hive comb. And so asked the beekeeper on property if he could please come out and get rid of these bees. But that swarm's got to go and find a place to live, wherever it is, a broken down car, sprinkler manifold. But they're not aggressive when they're sitting in a tree or flying over your head. They're not aggressive. They're just desperately trying to find a place to live. When they make comb, when they start making that white, waxy looking comb, now they can be defensive and therefore dangerous. But that's not native bees. They don't swarm. They're not dangerous. They're not aggressive. I never had a native bee be aggressive. This house will be, let's say it's half filled. Half filled. Half of these tubes are filled up. Okay, so they're no longer active. It's November, December, January, whatever. I take all the tubes out. I put them in a bee emergence box, a shoebox, right? Holes in it, right? Closed, rock on the top. This is empty now. Now it's coming springtime. Well, these guys haven't even hatched yet because remember, they're going to overwinter. They're not going to hatch until it's over 70 degrees. So I leave them alone, but I've got an empty hotel. So I need to put new tubes, new wood back in here. And so I'll let that go all season long. Now it's approaching December, January again. I've still got those in the emergence box, and I've got a whole bee hotel full of half-filled tubes, or maybe all filled tubes. So now's the time I'm going to go in here and take the remnants of last, and I'll clean them out then. And next spring I'll put them, and the contents will be in that. So I just kind of swap them. Yeah, they'll use it once. You'll see this tube will be capped, and if the cycle continues where it's in the beginning of the season, we've got an active bee. She fills this tube, she caps it, she starts working on another one immediately, and since it's warm, in 4 or 6 weeks, these bees could hatch and break out. Now you'll see a little hole in where it used to be capped, and they'll start to cycle all over again. They'll choose another tube. Or maybe they'll go somewhere else. I hope they stay here. Yeah, yeah. And so at the end of the season, remember, all these will come out. They'll go in the emergent. I don't know how many are half filled totally. I don't know. So, but this will be empty. And so come March, when temperatures are starting to get up above 70, I'll fill this with brand new stuff, cleaned or brand new. Now, some people, I was saying, some of the scholars say, throw it away. Don't reuse it. There's going to be bacteria and blah, blah, blah in there from insects or whatever. Don't reuse it. Other scholars say, nah, clean it. Clean it out with those little bottle, there's different sized bottle collectors. You can clean it. And so I'm going to try, I have a bee house that's a little bit larger, and I've separated top and bottom. I don't know why, but I separated top and bottom, and I'm going to use either the top or bottom or the cleaned material. So just so I know, are they reusing the stuff that I've cleaned? I'll put that in the bottom or the top, and then I'll put brand new stuff in the other compartment. Does that make sense? So it's a research and demonstration orchard, so I'm going to do some research and see myself, do they reuse the old stuff? I've cleaned it. Did I not do a good enough job? Other scholars say, don't worry about it. Just leave the stuff in there. If they want to use it, they'll clean it themselves. Well, maybe I'll try that too. But yeah, like I said, you ask different people the same question, you might get different answers. More than not, the scholars say, throw it away. But I'm going to try it. I'm going to try and clean these out and reuse them. They say that the holes need to be 3/4 inches apart from one another. These aren't 3/4 inches apart, right? They're not, but they fill them up. So you go figure. Go figure. For me, I don't have a bench press, right? So I've got this in my vise, and I've got a drill bit that's this long. Well, it's this long, goes in the chuck. So I'm trying to be straight, but sometimes I don't know if it's me, probably it'll come out the side. Come out, oh man. So do I throw it away? Nah, it's going in here, no one will see. And they use it. So they fill it. It could be that deep, whatever. They fill it and use it. So they're just amazing. Well, that throws that out the window, right? They say that they don't want holes in the back. They don't want holes in the back because they're burning daylight, having to fill those holes first. So if you really want to help them, if this is 6, just drill it 5.5, 5 3/4. But if you punch a hole through the back, don't worry about it. They'll fill it. They'll use it. But you'll notice by their behavior immediately. They will not let you approach the hive. Will not. So they have to don the full white bee suit. And in just moving these bees, we had 4 hives. The director told us we're going to have a research project starting in close proximity. We do not want these bees within 100 yards, so I want them moved into called the 100 trees area. So we moved them. Not a lot of shade for this. I set up a pond. It was a jacuzzi-sized pond. Plumbed it for water, so when the sprinklers came on, it would refill it. It never got empty. It was so big. But anyway, as I'm working on it, these bees start flying around me. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm filling it up. You guys thirsty? Come on, bee. And I got stung. I got stung like 3 times. And the beekeepers figured that they were defensive. And they said it could have been a lot worse. And so they came out. Yes, there were defensive bees that were starting to commandeer this hive, meaning they're going to kill the queen. They're going to make their own queen. This is going to be their hive. And if you get within easily 50 to 100 yards, they'll start attacking. And they flick. They just come right straight at you. It feels like somebody's flicking you. And and they won't leave you. They won't. You can turn around, walk, or run, and they will not leave you. They just continue to follow you. Where normal bees, they're going to, hey, there's an intruder. They go back to the hive and they say, somebody's approaching our hive. There's between 20 and 50,000 bees in that box. So they have resources. So they'll come out in mass to inspect you. So you turn around, you start walking away after a little while, they get bored and they go away. That's a normal Western bee. You know when you've encountered defensive or Africanized bees. You'll know. They're very aggressive. Very, and they fly fast, right? But as far as telling them apart, no, can't tell them apart. Some people say that Native bees are more hairy than honeybees. So that's one way to tell a native from a honeybee. But a honeybee defensive versus a honeybee Western European, I can't tell the difference. Those are masons. They like the soil. They'll cap their holes with mud. They are a fascinating bee, and there's a spectrum of mason bees. This chart depicts it, where there are so many different sizes of masons. You've got large masons. You've got very. Sometimes you'll see insects around your yard on your flowers, and you'll think fly. It'd be a bee. Quite probably is a bee. Just a real small bee. And there's only one thing that when they're foraging, when they're on flowers, they're at their most domestic stage. They're not interested in you. They're not in there. They're not defensive. They're out looking for honey and for pollen and nectar. Pollen is the protein. Nectar is the carbohydrate. Together, they mix it with a little bit of bee spit, saliva, and they make bee bread. And that's what a few more enzymes that they make royal jelly, because only the queen gets royal jelly, but the other bees will get bee bread. So it's just pollen and nectar, and that's all they want when they're foraging. They're just looking for pollen and nectar. They're not after you. They're especially natives. Carpenter like the woods, so they're the ones that people living in areas where there's a lot of barns and blah blah blah. They don't like them because the barn gets weathered, and the bees love it because they can chew into it a little bit easier than a young tree. And so, carpenter bee, half-inch diameter hole, perfectly round half-inch diameter hole. But again, docile, not after you. They just want to make babies. That's their only mission in life, is to make babies. And in doing so, they've got to get the pollen and the nectar, so they cross-pollinate our plants, flowers, vegetables, blah blah blah. I don't know that a bumblebee digs a pretty deep hole because she's going to have a colony of like 20 bees with her. So her hole will be deeper. Carpenter bees, no. Carpenter bees' holes are very shallow, not more than 6 inches deep, although 6 inches deep in a barn, right? But if you look up carpenter bees online, there are as many articles about how to take care of carpenter bees as how to kill carpenter bees, because they don't like the intrusion. But they're very docile. They just look dangerous. A bumblebee's got that yellow stripe, and so they say they're the world's uh, little bear or whatever. They're just a little bear, so fuzzy and round and so gentle. Oh, bumblebees and uh, honeybees, they are solitary bees, can sting. They can sting only once. And so if you ever are unfortunate enough to get stung by any bee, whether it's a solitary bee or a social bee, and you can see which way the stinger goes in, just rub it with your nail, credit card, whatever, to get the stinger out. Do it as soon as possible. Why? Because if you look at under a microscope at what it looks like when a bee stings you, bee stingers are barbed. So they go in, they don't come out. So when they go in, the bee flies out, it pulls all of that sac out of her, and she dies. So unfortunately, they've only got one sting, whether it be a honeybee or a social bee, one sting. Wasps and hornets, on the other hand, have slick stingers, so they can sting multiple times. So we're talking about a totally different insect. And they're not vegetarians. Hornets and yellow jackets are meat eaters. They'll go into a hive and kill a bee and take over the nest. Um, if you're at a picnic and you got bees flying around, chances are they're hornets or wasps, because they're after the meat.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.